So, My Hero Academia manga chapter 302 is out and it's translated. And let me just say this, that Toya Todoroki is very good at gaslighting. I mean, he's very amazing at it. I mean, like, I'm so surprised how great he is at gaslighting. Wait, what? Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Big Blue Drew 97 here, coming at you with My Hero Academia manga chapter 302 review titled Careless Handling of Fire, second part, or part 2, depending on how it's translated. And yes, the translations are out, and from what we have with this chapter, it's mainly the continuation of last chapter, continuing on with the Todoroki family flashback. We get better understanding of what happened with the Todoroki family in between the times of Toya's death and what happened last chapter, and we also get a little bit of information after the fact, and we basically just get build up until the moment where Toya Todoroki, quote unquote, died. And before we get more into the review, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't done so, if you're watching this video, to subscribe to my YouTube channel, because we just hit 400 subscribers, and at the rate that we're going right now, we'll probably hit 1,000 by the end of the year. So I'm very excited to see that. I'm very glad that this channel is growing, and if you want to see more content out of this channel, subscribe to your YouTube channel. Leave suggestions down in the comment on what you want to see more of, more reviews, more reactions. Just tell me what you would like to see, and hopefully I'll be able to provide that content to you. And without the way, let's get right into the review. So we actually start off this chapter with the immediate aftermath of what happened last chapter. If you don't remember what happened last chapter, Toya tried to kill his younger brother Shoto. So we get kind of the continuation of that, where we get the reveal that because of that inciting incident, that is the reason, at least in this flashback that we're given, why Endeavor does not let Shoto hang out with his siblings. And he comes to this conclusion that I need to have someone watch over Toya. Shoto cannot interact with his siblings anymore. I'm gonna have someone to make sure of that, because I can't really keep track of him because I'm a hero. And this is very interesting because we always just assume that, oh yeah, he did it because he deemed them as failures and he doesn't want his prized possession to interact with the common failures, when in actuality it's kind of for Shoto's protection, because literally his oldest brother tried to kill him. So it makes sense. It still has selfishness behind it, but it's not all selfish. It's also for the protection of Shoto. But even more interesting is that we get this short conversation between Endeavor and Ray, where the conversation can basically be summed up as Ray saying that, yeah, he only wants your attention. He just wants you to acknowledge him. Toya wants you to acknowledge him. And Endeavor is like, well, all I can do is teach him how to be a hero. And Ray just says, hero? Some hero? You're just running away, as we cut to 5 years later. And that is an interesting quote, mainly because what she says is really true. He's not trying to communicate with his son. He's not trying to tell him exactly what he needs and needs not to do. He's trying to just push it away. And that could be just, this mindset could be considered the main reason why Toya became Dabi, and that there's just this issue of communication between Endeavor, and not just Endeavor, between Ray communicating with her children about what is considered right and what is considered wrong. And we see later on this chapter, Ray tries to communicate with Toya, but she's very ineffective with it. And I think that's just a running theme with the Todoroki family when it comes to just communication. We see that Shoto is very aloof, and he doesn't really communicate his emotions well. And I think that is just something of a trait with the Todoroki family when it comes to communication, and that this lack of communication could be just the inciting incident for why Toya eventually becomes Dabi. So we cut to 5 years later, where we get to see the older Todoroki siblings interacting with each other and asking to go play ball. We see Fuyumi, who is age 12. We see Natsu, who's age 8. And we see Toya, who's age 13. And they want to go outside and play ball. Wait 1 second. Toya is 13 in this panel, in this chapter. Fuyumi is 12. Fuyumi in the current story is 23, so that would mean that Toya Todoroki is the oldest Todoroki child! Also that he's 24 in the current story. That doesn't really matter. What really matters is what happens next when these Todoroki siblings play, as well as the next panel, because we get pretty much an exact reenactment of the flashback scene of Shoto looking at his siblings during his initial flashback. And it's pretty much beat for beat. We see Shoto looking out at the siblings. We have Endeavor coming in and saying, you're in a different world, you can't play with them, as Shoto wants to go and play with them, as Endeavor plans to do more trading with Shoto. But what is added to the scene is that we also get to see the perspective of Toya himself looking upon Shoto and Endeavor with this type of menacing expression on his face, which leads to the reason why I said that Toya is very good at gaslighting, because he kind of gaslights Natsu right before he's about to go to sleep. So we basically have Toya who's like, yeah, I know what I did was wrong. I know I attacked my younger brother, but you know, it was all Dad's fault. Am I wrong? I mean, sure, he views us as failures. And it's like amazing like how in this modern day, you're able to have like children like this and they be failures. Am I right? This is all Dad's fault, right? So he's basically like sort of trying to gaslight Natsu. Toya's trying to gaslight Natsu into trying to join his side. But unfortunately, Natsu is only 8. And he's like, why don't you just talk to Big Sis about this? And we get a different side to Toya, where he's like, oh, come on, you're abandoning me too, Natsu? You're the only one that I thought I could rely on. You know that the girls in this whole house can't understand. They won't understand. And this is very interesting, because that seems kind of misogynistic. And it's coming from Toya, and like from what we've seen so far in this flashback, this isn't something that like Endeavor has like instilled inside of Toya. This is all Toya. Toya views like his most likely Fuyumi as well as his mother as being inferior, as being failures. And that's something that we saw last chapter, where Fuyumi tries to like give him advice and he just straight up ignores it. So this just shows that, yeah, Toya's like ideals are being warped, and not necessarily by the hands of Endeavor, but just by his like drive. His motivation is twisting his sense of like, sort of like twisting his sense of morality. And we kind of see that more in the next few pages, where we get to see that Toya is interacting with his mom, Rei. So we have Toya interacting with Rei. Rei is trying to stop him. She notices that, oh, you're going up to the hill, you're training, you shouldn't do that, and questions whether or not Toya really wants to be a hero, and how she's like, you know, you don't have to like follow down this path like of your father. Yeah, your father's very obsessive. Like there's all of these things. Like, do you even want to be a hero? And it's like, you can be whatever you want. You don't have to be a hero, Toya. And Toya's like, what do you even know? I mean, come on. The only reason why you're here is because you were basically sold to us. Your family was poor, they needed the money, and you were sold to us to have children. Aren't I right? I was only born because of Endeavor wanting to surpass All Might. So really, you have a part to play in this too, Mom, as he shuts the door and leaves. And this is horrible, because to sum up basically what he says, Toya basically is like, his mother's trying to like comfort him, trying to like help him, and he's like, yo, you're worthless. I hate you. You're only here because Endeavor needed someone to have sex with and have children. He's not necessarily wrong, but that's like very, very harsh. And like, this is coming from Toya. This is something that we haven't really seen a whole lot with Endeavor. This is all coming from Toya. And this just shows that, yeah, Toya is getting further and further away from like what is deemed to be moral, as we get another revelation about how his quirk actually works after he's this harsh to his mother. So we see that, and also something interesting that I want to add is that while he's saying this, his eyes begin to change shape and like begin to like look like flames from his eyes. And that's very important because it ties kind of into how his quirk works and how his flames work. So we get an exposition about the moment where Toya's flames began to change, how his fire wouldn't be put out, and that on his 13th winter, he, along with the changes with his body, with puberty and all of that, his flames changed from red to blue, where Toya comes to a realization that the flames can increase in power with his emotions, that the more emotion that he has and feels, the stronger his flames become. But it comes with a drawback, because every time he uses his flames with these strong emotions, he can't stop crying. And that is great, and that's interesting, but because it puts into context every time that Dobby has used his flames, he has always cried like blood, and why whenever he uses his powers, why they're so powerful, why he uses it in small bursts, is because it's powered by his emotions. And that at first his flames used to be red, but when he started to feel these stronger and stronger emotions, that's when it started to become blue. So we're realizing that his quirk is directly tied to his emotions, meaning that if he can get over the burdens and not be as emotional as he is, maybe his flames will get weaker and go back from blue to red, which would be an indicator that he is healing. So maybe this is going to be very interesting setup eventually for the fight between the Todoroki family and Toya, aka Dobby. And now we probably get to like the most impactful part of this chapter, both emotionally and thematically, because we get to see that after that incident where Toya gets to learn more about his fire quirk, he goes and tries to talk to his father, and he's like, "Hey Dad, can you come see this? It's so cool, it's so interesting." Where Endeavor looks, is like, "You're burned. What happened?" And he's like, "Yo, I've been training. Yeah, I want you to come up to the hill. I want you to realize that I wasn't a mistake. Yeah, I know it's not great. And I mean, sure, Shoto may be stronger now, but like, if I keep working on it, and if you train with me, maybe I can surpass All Might. So come on, just come to the hill. Just come to the hill." And Endeavor just looks just furious and confronts Rei and begins yelling at her, and they have this domestic argument where Shoto tries to interfere. He's like, "Stop bullying Mom, stop bullying Mom," as Endeavor's like, "Why weren't you watching him? Why did you let him do this? Why are you not involved with his life? Why do you keep doing this?" As we get to see, like, this is probably the moment, this was like the instigating moment of like no return, where this argument between Shoto and what is even more interesting is that this is kind of a realistic like domestic dispute between two people, and how Shoto tries to step in to protect his mom, but we also see that Natsuo and Fuyumi also hear this entire conversation, as Fuyumi is trying to like comfort her younger brother, as we get like sort of like how Rei's like, "I couldn't stop him," which, I mean, to be fair, if she attempted to stop him, he could have potentially attacked her. So from here on, we sort of go in between the past and the present as we get Rei and Endeavor talking. And this is where the issue of communication comes in, where we get the reveal that Toya went up to the hill waiting for his father, and that he never came, as they both come to this realization that, where we get this realization that the reason why Endeavor didn't want to teach his son, because he thought this was the best way to prevent him from going down the path of being a hero. But in actuality, he didn't just do this because he didn't want him to be a hero. He just didn't show up because he didn't want to be a hero. He thinks maybe if I had talked to them, maybe this wouldn't have happened, but that he just didn't know how to talk to his son. And Rei's like, "Yeah, neither did I." Tying into the issue that they just didn't know how to communicate with him. And because of that, because they didn't communicate with him, because they were unable to communicate with him properly, Toya couldn't control his emotions. He could only increase the temperature of his flames, which eventually led to his body catching fire, starting off with the flames coming from his eyes, engulfing his entire body, then the trees around him, then the entire mountaintop, as we actually cut over to Dobby, who's also thinking about that time, how it was scorching hot, and how you reap what you sow, I guess. And this is a very interesting dialogue coming from Dobby, because you were thinking like, oh, he must be talking about Endeavor, but I think that while the Todoroki family is having this flashback, Dobby is also thinking about his past, and he's thinking about, yeah, I think I might have been really more obsessed about Endeavor than I probably should have. But hey, you reap what you sow. I think this is also indicating that not only is Endeavor reaping the sowing of his own actions, but Toya is as well, because a lot of actions that Toya took were not directly taken by Endeavor. Sure, Endeavor didn't communicate with him, but Toya was the one who didn't ask for help. He's the one who brushed off Fuyumi and his mother as being failures. He's the one who thought that his family were failures, that he was the one that was supposed to be a hero, even though he was given many different outs. He's the one who pushed his body to the brink, even though it was hurting him. Those were choices made by Toya himself. Meaning that, yeah, Endeavor might have been the catalyst for all of this bad stuff happening, but Toya is not innocent in this at all. He kept pushing past this, even though he knew the dangers of it, but he still did it, and now he's reaping what he's sown as well at that moment. So it could still be talking about Endeavor, but it could just as well be talking about Dabi, Toya as well. And then from here, this is basically where the flashback kind of ends, where we cut back into the present, where we have really all of the Todoroki family basically reflecting on what part they played in the downfall of Toya, and just the heartbreak of the family. Endeavor is thinking about how if at that moment, if he had just let it all go, he wouldn't have been obsessed with a Shoto trying to still surpass All Might, and Rei's and if because of that my fears grew more and more when it came to you, where I started to see you in the children, where we also get Fuyumi, who's and because I was just sitting there and never really approached Toya, never really tried to help him, I just tried to talk about it, and I didn't actually take action. And then you have Natsu, who's thinking that, all of this is coming from you, Endeavor. You're the root of all of this. But even Natsu comes to the conclusion that, but if I had only just knocked some sense into him, maybe Toya would not have turned into Dabi. And this is very impactful, because it shows that even though Endeavor may have been the root of all the problems in the family, he's not the only reason. Everyone more or less had a part to play in how Toya became who he was. And a lot of it comes through communication. Endeavor did not communicate how he felt about Toya wanting to be a hero. Rei didn't communicate how she was feeling fear towards Endeavor, and she allowed that fear to consume her. Fuyumi was being a bystander and was just letting all of this go. She was trying to talk it out, but she never took action, while Natsu believes that if he had just taken action one single time, none of this would have happened. And relatively speaking, what they're saying isn't necessarily wrong, but the important part of all of this, and they even bring this up, is that, even though we're doing all of this, and even though we're all hurting, it is still our responsibility. It isn't just Endeavor to take on this burden. It is for all of us to bear, because we all had a play in this, no matter how big or how small. And this is coming from Rei herself. And then you have Rei, who brings up the idea that even though all of their hearts are shattered, they should still fight. And Endeavor chimes in and is yo, are you sure that you're really Rei? And she begins to chime in and is the kid who went through the most, who should be hating us the most, who is feeling the pain most, decided to call me mother once again. He made friends at UA, and basically he's the hero of our family. He is our own hero, referring to Shoto, as we see Shoto with the image of a younger Shoto during the sports festival in Deku, and how Deku was kind of the catalyst for having Shoto to be more open and begin to change his perspective, as we finally get to see Shoto beginning to talk, because even though his voice was basically burned, his throat was burned, he begins to cough. It is I talked to Mom, and I thought that you may not be able, I thought I would have to fight against Toya if you're unable to, but now I realize that we just have to fight him together. So stop crying, get up, and let's stop Toya Ni together. As the chapter ends, as we get to see both Hawks and Best Jeanist hearing this entire conversation from outside the room, confirming that Endeavor is changing, and that he may be able to take down Toya as the chapter ends. And I'm pretty sure we're not on break next week. We're not on break next week, so this is a very great chapter of My Hero Academia. we mainly focused on the Endeavor family, but what is very interesting is that we got to see a totally new and totally different perspective on how we should be viewing the Todoroki family. Not just Endeavor, but everyone. And even though this chapter, it doesn't say that Endeavor is not at fault for everything that happened with the Todoroki family. He is the root. He is the reasoning why all of this horrible thing is happening. His obsession with surpassing all might, all of that falls on his shoulders. Nothing, but I think I might have said all for one a lot, but that doesn't really matter. That it all still, he plays a role in it, but everyone in the family still had their sins to play, and that they are still a family even after all of this, because Shoto still wants to be a hero, and how he was basically that shining light in the family to begin bringing them back together. So it's very interesting to see all of this setup, that some of the setup that we saw earlier in Shoto's flashback, and seeing it all come together, seeing the Todoroki family finally coming together. The story arc of like the Todoroki family being splintered and broken apart is beginning to come together, and it will eventually most likely reach its climax when they have to eventually fight against Toya, against Dabi, and that we always thought it's just going to be Toya versus Dabi versus Shoto, but it's going to be Toya versus the entire Todoroki family. Even though it may just be Shoto fighting, or it may just be Endeavor fighting, or it may be a combination of the two, they're still all going to be together, and they're going to try in some way or another take down Toya, but I don't think it's going to be like, oh yeah, they're going to kill him. No, they're going to at the very least try and like make him understand what he did was wrong and try to bring him back. Now, whether or not they're going to be successful with that, we just don't know. We just have to wait and see. But I will say that these past two chapters were very amazing setup, and really characterized not just Endeavor, not just Shoto, but was able to like fully characterize even Dabi, the entire Todoroki family. These two chapters just put a whole lot of character and a whole lot of development into the Todoroki family as a whole, and how not just one single individual fell off the wayside. We got to learn more about Rei, we got to learn more about Endeavor, we got to learn more about Toya primarily, but we also get to learn a lot about Fuyumi as well as Natsu, and how they're feeling about this, and how really Natsu is beginning to like come over to Endeavor's side in the way of like being able to accept all of his sins, not necessarily forgive them, but at least accept them and build a better like rapport with him. So it's very interesting to see all of that from these two chapters, and with this in mind, I have no idea what we're going to see next chapter. We may focus more on Deku, because I think over the last few chapters we focused, or we may even focus on Aizawa or the other UA students, but I really may hope that we may focus more on Deku next chapter. We may see that he's communicating with the vestiges inside of One for All. We may even get more development with Bakugo and All Might. We just don't know. But from what we've seen now, there's going to be a strong focus on like communication and connection with the Todoroki family, and I can't wait to see more of that in the future story. So that's all I really have to say about this chapter. What do you think about this chapter? What did you think about this chapters focusing on Todoroki family? Do you think that it's very interesting that we're able to get different perspectives on it? Did you like the different perspectives? Did you hate the different perspectives? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below, as well as leave a like on this video if you liked it. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to see you in my next video. So until then, goodbye for now. Bye! And I apologize for that gaslighting joke. It was horrible.